show, we have a topic that it may be new to some of you. All right. Sterling, what can you tell us about basic astrology?
Basic astrology is the fundamental physics, essentially, behind spiritual energy. It was the first science essentially developed or discovered. It was the precursor to just about every religion on the planet and science itself. There was a split, and they left the spiritual stuff on this side, they left science on this side, and each of them grew independently. But before that, they were all together, and that's what astrology is.
Okay.
Astrology was way back. People looked up, looked around, started observing the environment around them, and wanted to know how everything worked. And astrology was essentially the math that came out of it. Okay, that's where all the theories grew out, and that's where the science came from.
Okay.
Basics for astrology is energy, okay, and explaining it. The signs explain what the energy is. The planets explain how the energy is focused. The house system explains where that energy is focused. Aspects explain how that energy interrelates with itself. Okay, those are your major principles of astrology. Now it gets way more in depth than that. However, in the beginning, those are the basics you need to get an understanding of what it is you're actually trying to understand. So, when we view it, most people know the signs as this is Aries, this is Taurus, this is Gemini, and so on throughout the wheel. Okay. However, what does that actually mean? Okay. People understand fire, air, water, and earth, but most people don't really understand what any of those are and what they mean. Okay. So the elements themselves. Fire is expression. Okay. It's how anything is expressed ever. Air is interaction. It's how anything interacts with itself and other things. Okay. Water is sensitivity. It's how we're sensitive to anything around us. And then, of course, earth is substance. Okay. The substance of everything around us. Chairs, even the air, things that are more intangible than others, but everything has a substance to it.
Right, okay.
Because we talked about spiritual substance, and that's presence. So, okay, same thing. Now, two-dimensional reality, we have talked before that the elements break down into powers. So you've got fire is hot and dry, earth is dry and cold, water is cold and moist, air is moist and hot, and they travel in a cyclical pattern. Okay, one after the other, and it just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating, and breaking off into other cycles that break off into other cycles that break off into other cycles. This is not really breaking off; it's just dividing, and it's continually dividing and dividing and dividing and dividing. Okay, into all these separate circuits, essentially, of energy moving and interplaying with itself. So that's what we're looking at. Okay, now three-dimensional reality. We have a refractor of charge into three parts. Positive charge, negative charge, and the absence of charge that takes up space. Okay, and of course we call these the positive protons, negative electrons, and the absence takes up space inside of a nucleus is a neutron. Okay, so the building blocks of matter. Okay, now splitting those into three, the refraction in astrology are called qualities. Okay. Cardinal is what we call what protons would be. Okay, cardinals initiate energy. They initiate anything. They're the start. They're the beginning. You go from there. Okay, and then we have fixed energy. Okay, fixed energy builds. Okay, they're electrons, and again, they are outside of the nucleus, but they attract other particles to them and grow and build. That's exactly what fixed energy does. Electrons are then fixed. Neutrons, again, absence takes up space inside of the nucleus. Or what neutrons are. Neutrons are what we consider they're spiritual. Okay. It makes up against absence, zero,
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
unity, okay, infinity, Everything that spiritual energy is contained within absence of charge in the neutron. Okay. So, when the big divide happened, positive and negative went with science, spiritual went with religion, and now we have this big rift in between the two. But before that, they were all together, and this is exactly how they worked. So spiritual energy is 1/3 of all matter, essentially is spiritual. Okay? So, when we look at this, we have one of the energies which is personal, okay? That would be the initiating energy. What is this? What is a proton? How do we determine on a elemental periodic table what one element is different from another one is the atomic weight, okay?
Yeah. Yep.
That would be your protons. Again, cardinal energy right there, okay? So, it's personal. It decides what it is, okay? The next one that we have is electron. We talked about that building energy. It builds and attracts things to it, so it's creative, okay? So fixed energy we call creative. And spiritual energy, okay? We talked about it being absence, okay? It takes up space. That is unity. That is infinity. That takes all that spiritual energy, maps it in. So when you break down, which would be mutable energy in astrology,
Okay.
we call it for the qualities. So essentially, it turns the qualities into personal, creative, and spiritual. Okay. Now we have the elements that we turned in to expression, interaction, sensitivity, and substance. Okay. So now when we look at the signs, what are we looking at when we see Aries? Well, Aries, because it's cardinal, it's personal. And because it's fire, it's expression. So Aries actually means personal expression. That's what Aries energy is. Okay? That's what the energy does. Okay. The next one on the wheel would be Taurus. Taurus is fixed, so it's creative. It's earth, so it's substance. So Taurus means creative substance. Okay?
Okay.
And creative substance could mean whatever, structure. Okay. Now, we go to Gemini. Gemini is mutable, which means it's spiritual. It's air, which means it's interaction. So it's spiritual interaction is what Gemini means. Okay. So there are all these things that you can look at. Okay. And you could use words like purpose for that. Okay. But it gives you a different way of looking at the sign energy instead of just these weird little glyphs that everybody's heard of in a horoscope in a newspaper or even online. That's what they actually mean. Okay. And they're telling you what the energy does, what it's doing. Okay, what it is. Okay. So, and it goes all the way around the zodiac that way. Everything's either going to be personal, creative, or fixed. It's either going to be expression, interaction, substance, or sensitivity. And that clues you in as to what the energy does and how it works. Okay. So when we're talking about those signs then get directed. In the beginning, they're directed through planets. Each of the planets rules signs. Sun, moon rule one sign each. Other planets rule 2 signs each. And they are androgynous because all of the other planets rule a masculine and a feminine sign. The only ones that rule one or the other is the sun and the moon. Sun rules a masculine sign, moon rules feminine sign.
Okay.
All the other planets, and that includes Venus, it rules Libra and Taurus, Libra being masculine and air, Taurus being earth and female. Okay? Mars the same way. Aries is male, it's fire. Okay? However, Scorpio, it also rules, and that is water, and that's feminine. So even those two. Okay? And again, we go back to Hermetics, and we can get a little more involved in those gender breakdown issues. But as far as astrology goes, when you have a planet in a chart, in a particular sign, that planet is focusing that sign's energy through itself into you, being, if it's your natal chart, into you. Okay. Now, they focus in different ways. The moon focuses everything emotionally. Okay, it's how you feel.
Okay.
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 The sun is your essence, it's what you radiate. Okay. Even points that aren't planets, like your ascendant, which is not a planet. Okay? But your ascendant is how you present yourself. Well, your sun, your essence, is who you actually are. Beyond that. Okay? Saturn, it can be how you limit things within yourself. If things are limited to you, it can be your discipline. How you discipline, how you learn things, because it's the great teacher. Okay? So that's what the planets are doing. They're focusing energy. Every single person, every single thing that has a chart has every sign in it. There is no one that doesn't have any. When somebody says, I have no Earth, that just means they don't have any planets in an Earth sign. It's still on the chart.
Right. Okay.
It's still there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You can't exist without all of them. Nothing can exist three-dimensionally without all of those. Okay. Now again, the houses. The houses are like, where is it directed at? Okay. If energy in the 10th house, it's directed toward your career. Okay. Energy in the 6th house, service and sacrifice. Okay. Does it have something to do with work? Yes, it does. But it's more or less how you work as opposed to what you do as work, which would be the 10th. Okay. 7th house would be relationships. 4th house is going to be focused on yourself. Okay. 4th house is home and family. So it tells you where the energy is playing out for you, or where it's going to start if you want to use that energy. The planets also tell you things. Okay. Jupiter is how you expand. All right?
Okay.
Okay. Uranus is how you awaken. Pluto is how we transform. Neptune is how you transcend. Okay. Mars is how you're aggressive, how you're assertive, your drive. Okay. Venus is what you love, how you love, and what you love. Okay, and not just people. You know, I love chocolate. That's all Venus. Okay. I love to do this. I love to do that. It's all Venus. It's joy, fun. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
So that's what the planets are also telling you. So wherever Jupiter is in the chart, if you want to work on expanding yourself, you have to start there in that house. That's how it's going to start. Then you can go
Okay.
in other areas and things. Okay? And then, of course, we talked about aspects. Aspects are just angles and degrees, planets to each other, through you and what signs they're in. And it tells you how they get along. Okay? Squares are challenging. There's a problem. Okay?
Okay.
Trines are easy. You don't even have to think about it. The energy just flows. Okay, a lot of people are like, well, gee, I wish I had a lot of trines. Not really, because a lot of people that have a lot of trines are very lazy, because they never have to exert themselves to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Things are too easy. They get bored very easily. Okay, and a lot of the times they stop in the middle of things and never finish anything because of it. It's too easy. There's no challenge at all. Okay.
Okay.
And there are other aspects that go along. Oppositions are more mirrored aspects. Things play out in other people as opposed to yourself. So let's say there's something about myself I don't like. I'm insecure about something. Okay? And you do something. And I see that same insecurity, but I see it reflected through you. Okay, what you do is going to piss me off more than it should piss me off. And the only reason it pisses me off that bad is because it's not that you did it, it's the fact that it's something that I do that I don't like about myself. And because I'm seeing it out of you, it makes me more aggressive toward you because you're doing it, even though the problem actually relies with me. So that's how oppositions will work out. And generally, the person with the opposition takes on the energy of the fastest of the moving planets. The other person takes on the energy of the slower moving planet. Okay, and at some point that will reverse, so that that opposition energy can be worked out.
Okay. Okay.
The problem is that most people that don't have an understanding of any of that, they don't understand the opposition, and they just, this thing that this person does drives me insane, and they just need to stop it, and they focus on the wrong thing. Because getting that person to stop it doesn't help you at all.
Right.
Because you're still going to have a tendency to do it, and the next person that does it is going to upset you just as much. Okay? So, interactions. That's what aspects are talking about. Okay? Now, when you put all of these things together, you get life.
Mm-hmm.
A person, a thing. Okay? Looking at their chart, you can break it down and start determining why things work and how they do it. Okay, that's essentially astrology readings. Now, when we take it beyond that and go into physics, okay, it's how energy works. It's how energy behaves. So instead of behavior characteristics out of people, you're starting to look at how the seasons behave. Okay, different things in your life behave. Okay. Your career, you have to start looking at things differently and see behaviors that you didn't before, which is like when we talked about totems, why that's important, because they help you understand the behaviors of this energy.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
through things. And starting with animals is much easier because animals are all about behavior, that's what we do. It's hard to figure out what a rock's, the behavior of a stone, okay?
Yes, absolutely.
You have to look at it in a different way. How do you get there? Animal totems first. Because they have behavior, okay?
Yeah.
Plants have behaviors. They're just not as out there and expressed as well as their animals. But it's the same thing. Okay? And so essentially you're trying to read energy is what you're doing. What's going on and why is it working this way and how is this affecting things? Okay? So when we do moon ceremonies and we're pulling positive energy in from a new moon, okay, that's what we're doing. We're bringing emotion, this energy in emotionally, we're feeling it, through the moon. Okay. All the positive characteristics of that particular energy, and we're not focusing on the negative characteristics. And people who aren't doing ceremonies are pulling everything in. Okay. Full moon. Full moon hits in the oppositional sign. You want to release the energy to magnify the positive energy you're bringing in. Even in an opposition, they will always be the same gender. The sign energies will be.
Okay.
It's either going to be all masculine or all feminine. Unless you have a strange orb, but that's something we'll get into later. Okay. But for the most part, it's going to be oppositional. Oppositional energy. The positive characteristics work generally well together. The negatives do not. So during the full moon, the first thing you have to do is release negative aspects of that energy. You want to release it out so that you can magnify the new moon energy that's being brought in. At the same time, after you've released it, you want to then shift the direction of the energy instead of going out, coming in, and pull in positive characteristics of that oppositional sign. Because those will also magnify the positive characteristics of the new moon sign. That's how that cycle works,
Okay.
and that's how you want to cycle it to your best benefit, wherever that may be. The problem is that most people seem to think or want to know and need to inherently know what they need to do. And unfortunately, depending on where the moon is, what house it's in, what sign it's in, where it's being directed, it might not be where your focus is. If it's in the 10th house on career, that energy wants to be focused on on career. And you want to focus on a relationship, that's not going to help you.
Right.
It's not going to work because that's not where that energy is playing out.
Okay.
Doesn't mean that you can't focus any energy on the relationship. It means that you have to focus, if you're doing the moon, you have to focus on your career first with the moon energy that's coming in. Secondary, you can focus over on relationships. And if you want to do it with the same chart, you just look to what's going on in the chart within the 7th house and other things that have to do with relationships and how it may interact with the moon. Things of that nature, those you can do. However, that's what it's telling you. And that they're just giving you, it's just a guide. This is where you want to focus this energy on. This is how you want to focus it on. Okay. If it's cardinal, you want to initiate things. If it's fixed, you want to build on things that have already been initiated. If it's mutable, you want to think about completing cycles that you've already initiated and built on. Now it's time to complete them, let them grow and become what they're supposed to be. Okay, it's the total picture. The cycle's over. Let the cycle go, and then let it grow on its own, kind of a thing. But that's what you're looking at when you look at those things, and when we're doing those things. That's what you're doing. It's just telling you how things are working. It's just like physics. It's a how. It explains the how behind things.
Yeah.
Okay. And if things aren't working the way that you want them to, it can give you an idea of why. and what you need to do to change that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Or if maybe you're focused completely in the wrong direction and you need to refocus this energy in a way that it can play out. Rather than how you want it to play out just because you decided this is what you want.
Right.
It also gives you an idea of what's going on with other people. When you look at the signs and go, okay, when these two signs get together and they're in opposition of each other, okay, what's most likely to happen? Wham! And then you can go, okay, so we're going to have these problems, we're going to have these problems, I'm going to get these problems from people, and I'm just going to have to let it roll over the shoulder, so to speak, or try to deflect it in some other way. Okay? But it gives you an understanding of what's happening and what's coming at you and why. Most people who don't do any type of ceremony to harness the energy just allow it to play off any way that it wants to. So those oppositional energies are just going to slam into each other. And I mean, that's why prison, or not, I should say jails fill up. Hospitals fill up, psych wards fill up. All sorts of crazy stuff happens during full moons, and that's why. It's that oppositional energy playing itself out. Okay. And again, directing it, and then just understanding.
Okay.
Because when you're doing your releasement, you're going over, okay, these are some of the big things that need to be released during this energy. You know that most people aren't doing it. So when you're getting this from other people, it's not personal, it's not just projected toward you, it's the energy that they're not focusing correctly is coming out this way.
Mm-hmm.
So misplaced aggression, things of that nature, we're going to get hit with from other people on these.
Right.
Okay? And it can tell you things to avoid. You know, let's not go here, let's not go here, let's not go here right now. We'll pick this up at a later time, and now's not the time to do this one.
Right.
So,
right.
but that's what those are going to tell you. Okay? And that is essentially what the Wheel of the Zodiac's all about. It's giving you a blueprint to look at.
Okay.
Don't you see, where is this energy at? What's this energy doing? It also gives you a way to create your own blueprints when you want to do things. If you keep praying for the same thing over and over and over again, and nothing is happening, and you're getting frustrated, if you understand this, pull some charts up and try to figure out, well, when I'm doing this, why isn't this working? I'm focusing on this and this and this and this and this. And the best way to do it would be doing new moon, full moon. Okay, here's the moon. Here's what I'm doing. Why isn't it working? Okay. And then as you get more into astrology, you can actually take the two charts and meld them together, essentially. And look at them and go, whoa, okay, I've got, there's issues with my stuff and what's going on with the new moon. Here's a problem too. That gets into more, advanced astrology stuff.
Okay.
I shouldn't even say advanced. It's fairly intermediate, but hey, but it takes study to do that.
Yes.
You need to understand your own chart before you can understand anybody else's or how anything else interacts. Okay, but that's what they're for. They're also great for blueprints of yourself. So you can look at it and go, that's why I do this all the time. That's why I direct myself this way a lot. And it can give you, other things in your chart will give you areas where you can dilute some of the negative stuff you don't like. Well, if I use this semi-squared for these two things over here to try to focus this energy over here, that's going to minimize the effect it has in this area of my life. Okay, I can do that. Same thing.
Okay.
But again, because we are looking at it more through the eyes of physics,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're looking at, energy manipulation. That's essentially what more physics you're out to do. How do I do this? How do I do this? How does this work? How does that work? And how do we utilize this for our best good? Okay. And astrology gives you the building blocks to do that with. Because it takes all of the energy and tells you how it works together. And what it's doing and why it's doing it.
Okay.
And it gives you unintended consequences. Again, most people,
yeah.
well, I want this energy here. You're just starting out in astrology, you're like, well, I want to expand my wealth, So expansion, Jupiter. Second house is value, okay, well, so I want to do a trine here to this. You don't think about anything else, and then you also have, let's say, a few other planets that you're utilizing and stuff, and you're like, this seems like it would be great. But when you look at your chart, you can go, wait a minute. All of this stuff I wanted is great, but now I have all of these weird aspects that I didn't count on interacting, because now I've got a semi-square over here, and these trines actually unfortunately created a square here that I have to deal with. Okay. And then you can look at it and go, okay, I know why it's not working now. I gave myself a huge challenge that I haven't been able to break through, because I didn't even realize it was there. And now it's either this is how you break through it, or we got to scrap that and start over again. And figure out how to essentially do exactly the same thing we wanted without this unintended consequence. So we have to come about it from a different direction, different way. But that's essentially why astrology is so needed when you're looking at the spiritual thing, because it's the only real science that has a math base that incorporates everything into it.
Okay. Yeah.
And that has kind of gotten lost with, I guess you can call it fortune-telling astrology, which is what most people go for.
Yes, yeah. I would say that's probably the most associated with astrology these days.
And it did. And then, it started around the 1500s, I believe, is when that, because Agrippa even talked about that. It was moving from physics to behavior characteristics, and that wasn't right. And there's so much to it that you can't get a horoscope out of the paper. That's why they're not right most of the time, because it's 1 out of 10. That's just planets.
Right.
You got so much more going on. Not just your essence. Your sun happens to be in this sign, but what else is going on? Do you have anything else in that sign? Or what planets do you have that are doing other things?
Right, right.
And that's when you can really get into and start looking at more details. But again, the higher you go in astrology, the more detail oriented you can get, breaking things down. And then most people, I don't think, realize also that the planets rule the signs, and it's not the constellations. Energy flows through the planets, it doesn't flow through the constellations. The constellations were there and people looked up and went, well, this energy seems to last from this point to this point, and this star cluster looks like a bull to me, so Taurus. And it's a bull sign, that's what that was.
Okay.
It was a way to map it. So you can understand it when you look at it, where it is, okay, and where things are in the sky at the time. But the energy itself comes through the planets.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. And that ties into a whole other realm of things.
Okay.
When you get into the Kabbalah, each planet in the world of Bria is an angel.
Okay.
Is an angel. Yeah. Not is represented, is controlled, ruled by. No, it is an angel. Okay. So it actually brings it into the angelic realms. The planets are angels in Kabbalah systems. Okay. And then they have their own Sephiroth points that connect the planets. Also, making up the tree of life. And there's a holy tree and there's an unholy tree of life, same tree. Okay. It's what you connected to, essentially.
Okay.
On the tree. Okay. Most people don't realize the unholy part of that. They believe there's only one tree and it's not one tree.
Yeah.
And they're not chakras either. They do not lay on your body anywhere. That's just a way for you to see them. They're not actually any energy centers there. Chakras are actual energy centers. Okay. They're physically real.
Yeah.
The Sephiroth are not like that at all. The tree of life is just a map of how we can see them. So, and they correspond, each Sephiroth corresponds to a chakra also and a planet. And, you can keep going.
As I was going to ask, the planets are how the energy flows through.
Mm-hmm.
is that tied to how the energy interacts with us individually?
Well, it goes through them into our chakras.
Into the into the chakra system. Okay.
So it's kind of us, chakras, planets, okay, Sephiroth, the angelic hierarchies, and the 10 heavens. Okay, are essentially the planes that I use. Those are all planes that I use. And I work and do things. The pathways, so to speak. And as we talked before, there was a chakra that I call Doth, that was discovered by Kabbalists. They thought it was another Sephiroth. I believe they discovered a chakra. I don't think it had anything to do with Kabbalah. I think that they just happened to find an energy center that essentially should have gone with the chakra system. Lies between the throat and the heart. And for me, it's Mars, and Doth is what connects all of those pathways, those planes together. Okay. And Mars being the planet of aggression and drive makes sense for that.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so, and astrology essentially connects all that together. That's what it does. But it's vital in understanding how anything actually works, the structure of anything, is to look at a chart. Because that's essentially the thing's blueprint. And spiritual energy is included.
Right.
You know, and again, I think most people forget that too. All mutable energy is spiritual. Okay? It's housed in 2 planets, Jupiter and Mercury. None of the other ones are like that either. They each have a cardinal and a fixed. Except, of course, Sun and Moon. But all the other ones, it's cardinal fixed, cardinal fixed, cardinal fixed, and all the mutables are together in 2 planets.
Wow, Jupiter and Mercury.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like when we do our rituals, our hexagram rituals, that's why Mercury and Jupiter we call in, because we're calling in all the spiritual energy. And it works perfectly because they're contained within the 2, and that works perfectly with the hexagram rituals. You know, so coincidence? Probably not.
No, that makes that makes much more sense.
Yeah, ties in the geometry, it ties in all things. Not to mention the platonic solids. The platonic solids are essentially how we even understand aspects in astrology. It's you. Okay, and then you've got these planets. Well, the planets, they're not in a circle line. When they rotate, they don't hit into each other. One's here, one's here, one's here, one's here, you know, and they're all over.
Right, yeah, that's another question.
When you have a platonic solid, what it gives you is a point in the middle. And then from that point in the middle to its, I guess, axes, I guess is what you would call them. Points. If it connects 2 of those points and you, that's what creates the aspect. It's 120 degrees this way, it's 120 degrees that way. And these all connect to you. That 120 degrees is a trine. And that's how it's connected to you. You couldn't just do that with a triangle.
Right.
Because the planets aren't aligned that way. They're not in a row. One's here, one's here, one's here, they're that's the only way that you can do it. You're the point in the middle of that axis, and anything from those degrees creates essentially the platonic solid. And that tells you, okay, that's a trine, that's a sextile, that's a square, and that's how they come up with those.
Okay.
That's the
that was
the aspects.
That was gonna be my next question. Is I've seen this misconception a lot, where people think that the chart is just a two-dimensional representation.
Well,
everything is just two-dimensional, and it's...
No, it's a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional reality. I mean, that's what it is. If you were to actually go and do a chart like at a planetarium, you could only do half the chart at once. You could get one hemisphere, and then you could see it.
Okay, so you're talking, it's the celestial sphere.
Yeah, and you would only do half.
Yeah.
You could only do half at a time.
Yeah.
Unless you were sitting in a chair and there was nothing underneath you and you could look down and all around you, but that wouldn't be feasible or practical. But,
right.
You know, if you were in a planetarium, that's how they would have to do it in order to show an actual chart. That's up.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It would have to show where your point would be and how it's hitting other points in the sky and connecting these two together on you. And just about everything else.
Fascinating.
So,
Okay.
yeah, but that's your basic building blocks of astrology. You know, they break it down elementally, okay? And there's a cycle, cardinal, fixed, mutable. All, when you take the wheel and you break it into 4 parts, okay? 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Okay, cardinal, fixed, and mutable, cardinal, fixed, and mutable, cardinal, fixed, and mutable, cardinal, fixed, and mutable. Okay? It travels in that the whole time. Starts in the spring, ends in the winter. Now, when we look at that, it also does something else. There's another cycle. It's like, well, we have all these 3s, how come they don't fly away, drift away? Okay, well, the reason that they don't do it is because it follows an elemental cycle too. And the elemental cycle is fire, earth, air, water.
Okay.
Okay, that's how it flows. It's cardinal, fixed, mutable, yes, but it's also fire, earth, air, and water. So, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. All 4 elements. Okay. The last one, however, still connected to that cycle, is the beginning of the next 3 cardinal, fixed, mutable split.
Interesting.
So you've got
okay.
3 and you've got 4. Either one of them can break apart because there's either one here or one here. Connecting.
Okay.
So they can't just free fall.
So you, okay.
Out.
You got the
Makes
overlap
one
that locks it
entire
in.
structure, yes.
Yeah.
And locks the structure in.
Okay.
Okay. And that's the basic building blocks of the wheel. You know, there's a whole lot more that you can go into it, but in the beginning, that's what you need to know. Just to get an understanding of what astrology is.
Okay.
Okay. And then you break it horizontally across that point where you would break it, and that's where the sun would be on the horizon, but the point that you would break it off, the ascendant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The point at the other end is the descendant. Okay. And again, your ascendant is how you present yourself. Your descendant is your intimate truths that you brought with you. Okay. You break it vertically. The bottom part is what we call the nadir.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So your unconscious.
Okay.
The top, okay, is your midheaven. That's your conscious. Okay. Breaks into those 4 parts also.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. But again, that's what that, and that's all it is. It's just a blueprint.
Right. Yeah.
For energy. Of all forms, essentially.
Okay. Okay.
You know?
All
So,
right. Well, I guess one last question I have.
mhm.
Everyone knows the 12 signs of the zodiac.
Right.
What is this that I've been hearing about a 13th sign?
Oh, that's just garbage. I mean, it is, because the math doesn't work. The people, essentially, that came up with the 13th sign were thinking constellations. There's a 13th constellation, how come you don't, that's not included in astrology? Because it has nothing to do with astrology, that's why. Astrology is taking the 4 elements and breaking them into 3. 12 works, 13 does not. It doesn't fit, it's completely unbalanced. That's why it doesn't work.
Okay.
And it can't
Okay.
work, the math doesn't work.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And that's why there will never be a 13th sign. You know, people talk about, 2 ascendants, things of that nature, no. There are reasons, and there are mathematical axioms that have been built upon since the discovery of astrology that make 13 signs impossible. Because there has to be a balance to everything, masculine, feminine, it all has to divide. 13 can't divide.
Right.
You can't have that kind of a division. Okay. And we've also talked about the interplay, or at least we will be, if we haven't already, talking about 3, 4, 5, the numbers themselves, and the inherent fact that everything keeps going back to 5, keeps going back to 5, keeps going back to 5, even when you get other numbers. They keep pulling and coming back to 5. 3 and 4, doing the 7 and the 12, okay? And even the 3 and 4 themselves actually create 5. We've talked about that, and that'll be in other videos. But when you do that, the one thing that, again, doesn't factor in are numbers like 13. They don't fit in anywhere. They don't factor into a balanced equation. Essentially, when you get past 12, you're just increasing what you already know.
Right, yeah.
And to me, 13 is just, it's the end and the beginning spot
Okay.
for the rest of the numbers. Once you get past 12, okay, then everything just builds upon it.
It just builds upon what's already
Yeah, what's
been
already there.
established. Yeah.
And 13 seems to be the line. That's it. This is where it stops. I mean, metaphysically, for the really potent and powerful numbers. Let's put it that way. And then, like we talked about 0 and 1 and all of that, but yeah, there's no 13th sign. There never will be, because again, the template doesn't allow for it. There's no way to put it in and make it work.
Okay.
That's the problem. Yeah. But I think any more than that, we're just going to get people confused. I'm mad if that wasn't too much already. So.
Right. All right. Well, I don't have any other questions, so.
Okay. Good.
All right. Well, thank you for tuning in, and remember to like and subscribe. Thank you.
How'd that go? All right.